we had a whole lot of things planned last year for the 10th anniversary of the Moth, which of course we couldn't do because of the pandemic, so it's really nice that we were able to have this celebration, especially as we launched the magazine at Hilton Park 11 years ago. It was in the summer for the Flattery Festival, so it's always been a very special place for us.
While she's there, she has a quick look at flights to Newcastle, which are surprisingly reasonable. By the way, Paula says, when she and Jimmy are having their tea, I don't suppose you ever remember me talking about Ryan Hughes. We're going way back here, you know, university. We're going back years. No? Yeah, I'll read a little bit of one called Last Supper. Last Supper is about the kind of cafe that we have quite a lot in Belfast, which is a cafe that's run by a church, but also as well a charity. So it's kind of it's a workplace, but it's also one that's kind of therapeutic for people, because quite often maybe it might be people with mental health issues or whatever are given employment in a particular cafe. And so with this one, Last Supper, what I was thinking about was this was a sort of a sanctuary for the people that worked there. It was really an oasis, a sort of a safe haven. And this is run by a guy called Andy. And he's a good guy. He's trying his best. He's had some sort of religious conversion, and who knows whether it was actually the Lord's work or if it was drug-induced. But he has had a religious conversion, and he's running this cafe. And what happens is some of the younger people that work there do something that absolutely jeopardizes this cafe. So again, it's just a little section from it, and guess what? It doesn't end well either. On his way back to the cafe, Andy sees the door open as a young guy and girl leave. They're both laughing, and they stop to look through the window of the cafe before moving off up the road. Then out dashes Rebecca. Hey, Andy shouts, Rebecca, what's up? When he goes inside, Rosaline is sitting at one of the tables with two women. That, JD says, is a job for you. What do you mean? You'll see. Andy, Rosaline says, would you come here a minute, please, because I think you need to speak to these ladies here. JD winks. Good luck, he says. One of the women is sipping a glass of water while the other looks on, solicitous. Well, the woman says, you come to a place like this and that's not a sight that you expect to see. You think a place like this is going to be one thing and then it turns out to be something else. You think, her friend says, you think that you're doing your bit coming to a place like this. Maybe you shouldn't, but you do. It's not like there's not loads of other places on the road that you couldn't go to, places coming down with coffee shops. Has there been a problem? Andy asks. There's been a problem, all right. She flutters her hands. It's not what I bargain and see when I go out to a cafe, and certainly not a religious place like this is meant to be. This is meant to be a religious place, isn't it? I'm sorry, I'm not getting this, Andy says. Just as we're about to leave, she says, I thought I'll go to the toilet, sure, before we go. And when I open the door, what is it you think I see? Do you know what I see? Two people in your toilet. They were having intercourse, her friend says. Do you know what I mean? No, says Andy. Really? In there? He looks in the direction of the only toilet in the place. Unisex, cramped, the tiny wash basin that gets hit by the door, the gooey soap and that toilet brush that still has the barcode on it. Logistically difficult enough, but maybe those two that he saw leaving managed it. Are you sure? He asks. Son, I'm sure, she says. Her friend says, they're doing that, and then they're touching stuff like the sausage rolls. You know, they're going out and working with the food. Hold on, says Andy. You're not saying it was people working here. Son, that's exactly what I'm saying, she says. Andy turns round to look at the counter where JD and Rosaline are standing watching. No, says the woman. Not them, that's not who I mean, the young ones. They didn't even lock the door, says her friend. Imagine not even locking the door. You'd lock the door if you're even just going to the toilet. They didn't even see me standing there, says the woman. They were so involved in it. This, it is clear, could make the papers. A solemn-faced photo of this woman with her hair just done, sitting in the safety of her living room, nursing a cup of tea that has been made in the non-sexual province of her own kitchen, and it would herald the end of the place. This shouldn't have happened, Andy says. A shock big time for you, and all I can say is that I am really sorry. He pauses. But what I'm asking you, and this is me really asking you a big favour, I know that, but could you just keep this to yourself? The people involved, they will be totally dealt with. Trust me, this won't happen again, but could you just let this stay between ourselves? Well, she says, the people involved will be dealt with and they'll never do it again. Well, I don't know, she says. Please, says Andy. Well, I would rather just forget what I saw, she says. Sure, it's not like the people working here are right in the head, her friend says. Wouldn't that be the case? Well, Andy wants to contradict her, but he decides no. It's not the usual type of place, he concedes. No, she says, sure, God help them. He gives them both loyalty cards and stamps them 7 times. That means that next time our coffees are free, the friend points out, and he gives them the first slice of the new pavlova to take away. I just love getting the first slice, the friend says. Do you not just love getting the first slice? So, unfortunately, word gets out. Have we got, shall I read one more? I think we've probably got time, yeah. So I've got a new, so this Sweet Home was my first book, and I've got a new book that's coming out then in February, and the title story of this new book is called Dance Move. And I know that probably what will happen will be that I'll get asked questions about dancing, and I'll get asked all sorts of things to do with my own dance moves or lack of them. But really, this story is actually about paralysis. It's actually a story about people that can't move whatsoever, in both a literal way, but also a metaphorical way. And so what I thought I would do, just on an old A4 page. This book hasn't come out yet, so this is the way it is. I'll just read you the start of this. This is the story that the collection takes its title from. A woman Kate knows went to beginner's pole dance. At the end of the 6-week course, in addition to a certificate, there was an evening event for family and friends. The studio put a video of it online. Oh no, Kate said. All sorts of people could watch it. Let them, the woman replied. If they've got the inclination, I couldn't care less. Today, Kate is watching ballet dancers. The video is titled The Top 15 in the World. A woman on a vast black stage takes demure steps. On to another. A woman in chiffon wisps dances in front of a set with fake stone steps and a fresco. Kate searches for sexual modern ballet to see what comes up. A couple both in white shirts and black knickers clinch, disentangle, then clinch again. It's very tasteful, sexual modern ballet.
So the story I'm first going to read from is called Abortion a Love Story. And yeah, so the last story I wrote for the collection. It's raining. Right. When Natasha walked into Professor Carr's office, she was embarrassed. Her embarrassment didn't stem from her many absences and tragic results, the reason why she was there, but from the walls and walls of books that imprisoned the professor. A middle-aged man whose questions in his seminars prompted no answers and who secretly felt his deep knowledge of his subjects were hindering him in a world becoming superficial. He laid his plump, hairy hands on the desk in front of Natasha. Natasha knew this was a man who had spent a long time establishing a reputation, and now he had a reputation and nothing else. She felt deep pity for him. "I have a disorder," she said, preempting him. "I can't explain exactly what my disorder is, but it prevents me from absorbing any knowledge into my brain." Natasha thought about her disorder a lot, how it had developed, how it was particularly alert to moments of boredom. She wasn't even fully sure how she ended up in the college, which is separated from the outside world by large and forbidding gates, an oasis in an uncaring city. She remembered reading through the college brochures and picking the place with the oldest, leafiest trees, the highest buildings. This is where she would get the most value for her money, she decided. As for classes, she attended one here and there, but now she was in final year, she realised you were supposed to go to many classes, one after another. She no longer knew what she was studying. Out of panic and blind fear and increasing pounding in her chest, she had taken to stuffing her ears with cotton wool so she couldn't hear a single word in the gated community. It was the start of January and she spent most of her time sitting completely still in Front Square. She quivered with anger on the stone bench. Lately her anger was an uncontrollable thing. It trailed her everywhere, making her ugly. "Natasha, your results aren't up to scratch. If you don't do something, you probably won't graduate." "The unemployment building," Natasha said with finality. The unemployment building hung like a thread over the final year student body. They had heard various things. There was a place where men smoked openly and hacked into their elbows, where paint peeled from the walls as if trying to escape, where their immune systems would be lowered and threatened by ancient illnesses. Many of the students were leaving for the outside world with confidence, heading for financial institutions, their family businesses. Whenever Natasha was sighted, the other students admired her careless style and seeming disregard for everything, but she was clearly marked. If anyone mentioned the unemployment building to her in passing, she simply said, "At least it's honest. I find the college experience corrupt." Like a president under threat of assassination, she refused to show fear in public. "I know what fourth year feels like, Natasha," Professor Carr said. "It feels like the end of a party." "I've never been to a party." She gazed out the window. The city was moving closer, the buildings pressing in on her. "I have a lot of self-control," she said by way of explanation. "Okay, well, let's see if we can do something about these grades." She continued staring out the window. "I can't be saved." "Where do you think your problems began?" "The computer house." The computer house was a glass building attached to the library, and in the last year it had become a symbol to Natasha of the college regime. The structure was a mystery to her. Most days, out of curiosity, she ventured up and peered inside at the productive people busying themselves around the printing station. Often she imagined herself walking into the computer house, opening a document, putting words in that document, deliberate, incisive words about the subject she was studying, then standing at the printing station with complete attentiveness, waiting for her document. With the best of intentions, she stood outside and thought about going inside. Usually she was running away before she even noticed she was running away. Her fear wasn't fully irrational. The last time she had been inside in late November, she received an email from an account she didn't recognise, describing scenes from her life. They were written like the darkest play. Her uninspiring daily routine, her arguments with her boyfriend, one scene delivered in an unfathomable poetic language, all ripped directly from her life. She hadn't checked her emails since. "I don't think the computer house has done anything to you, Natasha. I think I'm being watched," she said. Professor Carr leaned forward on the desk, as if preparing to deliver a sermon. "Every woman in this country is being watched. But I specifically feel like I'm being watched." They sat in silence. "I hear the unemployment building is a lot like hell," Natasha said after a while. "You should be grateful that you're young." "I want you to be over. I don't like it." She thought of the hours she spent on the stone bench waiting for her ute to pass. She often sat for so long, morning to evening, that she heard the 6 o'clock bell signalling religion. She knew time moved strangely inside the gated community. She was largely indifferent to her fellow students, with their loud typing on computers and the ideas they communicated to each other in trembling voices. They all seemed to follow a strict code, and in the college coffee shop they outlined their secret philosophies passionately, huddled beneath heavy cardigans. "What are you all talking about?" Natasha wanted to scream. "Ideas, ideas, ideas." She had no time for ideas. She wasn't raised with ideas. "I don't like it," Natasha repeated. "Natasha, we only have a few months. Let me help you." "But my disorder," she said weakly. When Professor Carr discovered what a Philistine Natasha actually was, he dedicated himself to her general cultural education. He instructed her to come up to his office 3 times a week. As he listed out books to her, Natasha counted the hairs on the backs of his hands. There were 6 longer hairs and 3 shorter ones. Had she read The Americans, Bellow, Roth, Auster? How was her philosophy? Had she seen The Obscure Object of Desire? Had she seen Vertigo? He screened films for her as she lay on the carpeted flooring of his office. She positioned her body so he could see down her top. She felt as if she was slowly seducing a priest through a confessional grill. She watched the lint from the carpet rise and fall. Soft carpet was still new to her. "Do you understand it's about the danger of possession and the futility of desire?" he asked. She looked at him sadly. All the money he spent on that suit. What a waste. Natasha felt altruistic during these trips, like she was throwing pieces of bread to a starving duck. The professor acted innocent, like nothing had happened with the student before, but Natasha wasn't so sure. She felt like he might have gotten away with a lot in his office simply because of the size and shape of it. Despite her doubts, when she first touched him, on her 6th appearance, she giggled, and he blushed right down to the back of his hands. When Natasha first entered college at 18, a boy called Patrick, stick-thin, raised Catholic, had attached himself to her. He was her first boyfriend. They were a good pairing because she was a strange person pretending to be a normal person, and he was a normal, well-raised person desperately pretending to be strange. She knew when they left college he would get a job in a bank, develop financial ideas. He was the sole link to a life Natasha felt she never could be fully part of. Already she suspected love was over for her. How could you make a person happy? How could they make you happy? During the day, she wandered the campus with Patrick, avoiding her classes, the buildings looming over them, the city outside the walls, doing whatever it did in its daylight hours. And he filled her in on the comings and goings of the place. She worried, despite all preventative measures being taken, self-control barriers being rightfully installed, her daily exercise regime producing slick, metallic sweat, that she had inherited her mother's weak and crazy personality. Her mind felt like a long trailer carrying a number of cars. If one car went, they'd all go, scatter across the motorway, cause carnage. She would miss her sanity when it went. She wanted to spend her weekends like the other students, underground, undernourished, blacking out, being infinitely surprised by her own youth and beauty, but she didn't allow herself. In her entire college career, she hadn't had one bit of fun, and she was immensely proud of this. Fun was forbidden to her. She might enjoy it too much and slip into the endless pursuit of it. At least she was charming, she assured herself, but charm was thin compensation for a life of constant lurking terror. Her relationship with Patrick had become queasier and queasier. In September, she had fallen pregnant and she had asked him to steal money from his parents to pay for the abortion. "Steal money from your father," he said. "I'm not a thief." "Why are you this way, Patrick?" she asked in genuine bafflement. The night before she travelled, Patrick, counting out the cash, looked like he might cry. "It's okay if you want to cry," he said to Natasha. "I don't," she replied. "I'm not sure if you know, but I had a very tough childhood, and I've had to overcome obstacles far greater than this to seal my place in the elite college. You don't go to any of your classes." "I have a disorder," she said. "Anyway, you're only upset because you think you're supposed to be. You don't care about me." He didn't correct her. It was as if he couldn't procure an abortion and lie in the same week. It would have to be one or the other. In the clinic, she sat in the waiting room, trying to figure out how she was supposed to feel, wondering who to blame, nurturing her anger. Although she was alone, she didn't feel alone. When she returned, she and Patrick stayed together. It was around then she stopped attending college full-time and started using the cotton wool more liberally. At the weekends, when Patrick went out to clubs, she stayed in his family home and cooked him hearty lasagnas. She bought a special apron. She wanted to look proper, like I'm really competing with the rain. She wanted to look proper, like a girl who would never have an abortion. The apron was a plastic material, every stain wiped right off. She bought it in the luxury department store. On Saturday nights, she watched television in the good living room with his parents, who loved her like an orphan. Patrick arrived home on the edge of Sunday evenings, looking strange, dirty, with that shame he carried on his shoulders whenever he'd been cheating on her. Whoever he had been sleeping with, Natasha still got an almighty thrill watching him eat those lasagnas. As she layered the ingredients, the red of the mince reminded her of her father's bloody mouth, huge and open at their kitchen table. To calm herself, she often locked herself in the bathroom and counted the perfumes, emerging extremely fragrant. She didn't eat any of the lasagnas, and if Patrick started telling her about the fun he had at the clubs, what a glorious good time it all was, she just stood up and left the room. Afterwards, they had sex tentatively, lightly, as if neither of them wanted to be involved anymore. On one of their last weekends together, Patrick, a psychology student, said that God appeared to him in a dream and told him the only real addiction Natasha had inherited from her mother was her addiction to pain. Finally, in the college coffee shop, their relationship was coming to a close. She slid a cold lasagna across the table as a symbol of their time together. "I don't like you anymore," she announced. "You don't like anything, Natasha." It was true. One day, as a challenge, she set herself the task of writing down everything she didn't like. She filled an entire copybook with her tiny, hateful handwriting. She included the elite college at least 45 times. She included the concept of fun 10 times. She included Patrick 18 times. She shrugged. "Goodbye, Patrick." Patrick tapped his fingers across his nose, subsuming this rejection into his grand personal narrative within a few short seconds, and stood up. He didn't say goodbye. When he was safely out of sight, Natasha took out the ornate cigarette case in which she kept her cotton wool. She had to be careful she didn't hear any opinions in the coffee shop. She crammed some in her ears and began to cry. Normally, she didn't understand her fellow students' need for melancholy, their high emotional register, shrieking music, and complete lack of composure, like they were auditioning daily for some drama she wanted nothing to do with. But she had to keep her emotions quiet and fixed in place, or her whole face would break apart. But this was the end of her first romance, and she was determined to enjoy it. She wept loudly, not knowing herself if they were fake or real tears. She attracted a lot of attention from nearby tables. Her father's false teeth appeared to her that night, their cold porcelain chattering in the silver of her dreams. For once she could hear what they said. "Natasha, don't lose your mind." I think, like Wendy, none of my stories end that well. That one's quite long though, so it takes a while for that to not end well.